I didn't expect to be doing one of these kinds of videos again quite so quickly. These are sort of alternatives to my daily good games videos where I review an indie game. These are supposed to be just more general chatter around the indie games world, the environment. So, yeah, I did one recently just talking about what an indie game actually is and why they're important. And then I was thinking about this major event that has happened recently that I'm actually slightly late to the party to. And I think it's really important for very similar reasons. So I thought I would talk about it, and it gives us a chance to play a nice, relaxing time guesser game, and yeah, have some sort of moderately serious discussion while we do it in between it. Yeah, and we'll talk about what happened, why it happened, why it's a bad thing, and possibly what we can do about it, if anything. But let's just start, just before we jump into the time guesser game. Let's start by talking about what it's about, which is itch.io. For those of you who might be new here, itch.io is the website where independent developers can essentially for free host their games. Jump on and just upload a game, put some information up there. People can come and search for it to play it. If they want, the developer can then request some money from their game, either asking for donations or directly just selling the game. Itch.io gets a percentage of the sales, and the developer gets some money. And it's a really, really powerful tool, a powerful platform for independent developers to get a start in life, to get some, if nothing else, some attention for something before they move it to Steam and things like that. So it's a very, very valuable site, and a very powerful site that I think needs some attention and some protection. That's where I spend a lot of my time, because it's where I find all the games that I do the good games reviews on. Possibly not all of them, and possibly not all in future, but I think the vast majority are probably going to come from the site. Yeah, so we'll talk about what happened in the next section, but let's also jump onto the other part of this video, which is Time Guesser. I'm going to hit play. We're going to play a just no time and no challenges or anything like that game. Just something to look at and to work through while we let bits of this tale settle down into our head. Yeah, so let's start with... this looks Japanese? Is this Japanese or Chinese? No, that looks like hiragana, so this is Japanese. We are somewhere in Japan. We are somewhere in the 50s. Can we see any cars? There's a bit of a car that looks like a post-World War II car. So this might be when America is helping Japan rebuild. Is this Japan? See, that looks like hiragana there. Actually, that looks like katakana. Either way, it's that means it's Japan, not China. Could this be Tokyo? I mean, I definitely could. It's difficult to tell in an era this old, because Tokyo has changed a lot over many years. I'm gonna say this is 1955. I mean, this could be Tokyo. It could be anywhere, actually. Osaka or anything, but yeah, let's say Tokyo. Oh, yeah, it could be anywhere in Tokyo, so let's just go somewhere central. Please accept my click, thank you. 1955. There's no numbers on here, I guess, to set a date or anything like that. She looks very focused and serious. He just looks determined. And they look like they're wondering what the hell's going on over there in their fine overcoats. Must be a chilly time of year. Alright, let's make that guess. 7 years off, not too bad. Oh, these are actors. Miki Norihei and Tange Kyoko. Standing in the Kyobashi district of Tokyo. Okay, so it's Tokyo, so we're not too far away. 2Ks away. 7 years off. Alright. So I thought it would be a little bit further into the 50s, but they apparently got going quite quickly. Still 8,000 points. We are happy with that. Let's have a look at the next picture, and we can talk about exactly what happened to Ichio. Okay, we are actually in Egypt or in a movie set. Looks like a movie set. For a movie that is set in Egypt, so this would probably be Hollywood or something like that. Anyway, I'm being distracted. Right, what happened to Ichio? So, I'm sure some of you know what is going on, but for those of you who don't, Ichio suddenly de-indexed about 17,000 games. At least that's the number I've heard bandied around. A whole bunch of games. And what de-indexed means is that the games were no longer listed in search results. So Ichio actually has a really good search system where you can set a bunch of tags and then search for tags, as well as sort of words and titles and things like that. But now these games would not appear in any searches, which, as you can imagine, is a bit of a death knell for a game that's trying to get going. A lot of games have the communities that will support them. A lot of games have other locations where they also present themselves and can draw players in. But the Ichio search is still a pretty solid starting point for indie games. So this is a bad thing. And some of the games were actually outright removed. So even if you had paid for the game, it was no longer on the Ichio hosting site, and you would have lost what you paid for if you were a player who'd purchased it. Now, as you can imagine, the tags of the games that were de-indexed, were NSFW, adult, or erotic. So all kind of adult content games, adult sexual content specifically. Those were the games that were suddenly de-indexed. And in itself, this is probably not a good thing, because I don't think preventing people from seeing adult content consenting adults from seeing adult content is a good thing generally. I think that is a step backwards in modern morality, and just modern social development. But this also severely affected games with LGBTQ plus content, because an LGBTQ plus game probably has adult or erotic content in it, because it's about sexuality, and obviously that's going to be a theme that runs through the game. And I'm sure many such game makers probably mark their games with NSFW or adult tags just to be safe, to make people be aware that this is a game that talks about sort of sexual stuff. So even without the games containing any of the content that the de-indexing was supposed to remove from society, they were de-indexed, badly treated. And more importantly, it's just rumors in the media and things like that, but there were suggestions that LGBTQ stuff would get directly targeted in the next sort of wave of the cause of this de-indexing, and possibly even tags like woke or DEI, things relating to those elements might also be in the firing lines. There's no sort of real proof or sign of that just yet, but it is a very valid fear. So that's the bad thing. A whole bunch of games with adult content were suddenly removed from the Itch.io storefront, and we're just going to let that sink in as the thing, and you guys can think about why this might be. We'll talk about why in a minute, if you don't know. But let's try to figure out what is going on here in this movie. Could this actually be Egypt? What the hell is this here? I mean, this could go a number of ways. No, these guys aren't dealing with cameras. I thought this was a camera scaffolding. I mean, it might be. It definitely looks like something like that. But there is a lot of background here. So this might actually be the pyramids. Are those cows? No, horses. Alright. Well, there's a lot to talk about here. I mean, this looks like a camera crew, but this does also look like possibly the real place. It is hard to decide, hard to choose. It just looks a little bit small relative to the things around it, but it might just be far away. So yeah, I think again we're possibly even pre-war. So I'm gonna say 1930. Let's say 1932. That's a good time to do it. And we are in fact near the pyramids, which are like a bit below Cairo somewhere, aren't they? Trying to look for something that possibly reminds me. I'm gonna say here about Aswan. I don't think they're that far north. I think they are quite far south. Alright, well, let's see how well we can do with that. Am I going to be bad? Okay, we were 600 k's away. It is, alright, further north than I was thinking. Oh, and we were 30 years off. That is terrible. That was 1960s. I mean, come on. Dutch photographer. Get some slightly more modern fashion. I mean, look at these coats and things. Alright, yeah. That is awful. 3,000, just under 4,000 points. That has hurt us badly. At least the location wasn't too far off. And even there, I was a fail. I thought it was much further south than that. I don't know. I was fascinated in Egypt when I was very young, and then I kind of lost that fascination. I became much more interested in kind of medieval castles and things like that. Egypt, yeah, I didn't like it anymore. Anyway, so the next round, and we'll look at the picture, and it is. Oh, this is going to be like Malaysian or something, isn't it? Alright, well, let us talk now about why these games were de-indexed. And this may come as a surprise to some of you, but it wasn't Itch.io's decision. It was actually the payment processors that processed the payments made to the developers and to Itch.io. With Visa and MasterCard sitting at the top of the pile. So essentially these payment processors said that if you continue to host content of certain kinds, we will no longer process payments to and from your site, anything that sort of involves your site. And I mean, that is bad enough in itself, but digging in a little further into why the payment processors made this decision, and it turns out that it is because of pressure from an Australian sort of activism group called Collective Shout. They claim to be heavily sort of pro-feminist ideals and sort of activism, and sort of one of the games that triggered them off to putting pressure onto the payment processors to put pressure onto Itch.io was the game called No Mercy, which was, shall we say, a game about consent in not particularly good ways. And this falls flat a little bit because No Mercy had actually been removed by Itch.io themselves from their storefront months before any of this happened. So this just seems to be a bit of a flag that Collective Shout are waving to show, to virtue signal a little bit, and also Collective Shout claim to have sort of succeeded in this effort by essentially spamming the Visa and MasterCard call centers and just harassing them enough that they gave in and did the sent the message through to Itch.io to delist the games. But a little bit of digging has suggested that Collective Shout actually have contacts in the Visa and MasterCard infrastructure, senior contacts, and they were able to apply pressure from that direction, which again sounds rather suspicious. So, what is actually going on there? What kind of influences do these people have? And, is this a good thing? And we'll talk about why I don't think it is a good thing at all in the next section. But before that, I just want to cover a reminder that this is not Itch.io that is the bad person here. Itch.io are too small to fight back against behemoths like Visa and MasterCard. I mean, it is kind of bow to this pressure or die is really the choices that they have, and they don't really need to die on this particular hill. This is not the fight that they need to fight, at least in a direct confrontation. They couldn't really afford to call Visa and MasterCard's bluff. It would have killed them as a site, killed them as a company, and I think they do more good than just providing a platform for adult content. It's still a bad thing, and it would have been nice if they would have had the ability to fight back and sort of the collective choice that they should have. But Visa and MasterCard and their associates, I'm assuming sort of American Express and stuff like that, are really only pretend to be distinct competitive companies. They are actually quite collective in their approaches to a lot of things. You couldn't just say no to MasterCard and assume Visa will keep supporting you. They are all providing a unified front and really suggest strongly that maybe some antitrust investigations need to get a little bit more aggressive in their arenas. But yeah, I'm sure they very, very carefully stick to the letter of the law, and there's not much you can deal with there. So yeah, anyway, Itch.io could not fight them. And even if they could, the problem is collective shout is saying, oh, this is for women, and probably also this is for the kids, to protect the kids from this adult content. And it's hard to fight against that claim, even when it doesn't actually make any factual sense, even when it's not really legitimate. Like I said, we'll talk about that in the next section. But even if it was, even when it isn't, there are things that it's hard to fight against without looking like the bad guy. If somebody says this is for women, then if you say, well, hang on a minute, you sound bad, because why are you not for women, or for the kids or anything like that? So these are not claims that is easy to fight for, because it gets people riled up in their behalf before you can even defend yourself. And it's worth pointing out that this has already happened to Steam. The Visa and MasterCard put pressure on Steam for adult content games. Steam took less of a hit for this because they have more control over their the stuff that appears on their storefront. They are a lot more aggressive about investigating it and making sure that only a certain type of content appears on the Steam storefront, because they can afford to, because they are much bigger and much more original, and they're wrapped into a lot of in-depth systems, whereas Itch.io deliberately clawed their way into the market by opening the gates up to developers who could really put, I won't say anything on there, because there are content restrictions in Itch.io. They did restrict stuff quite severely. They just didn't. There's a lot of stuff that kind of lived in the grey areas of their restrictions, and sort of sat there quietly, hoping that they wouldn't get too big to get kicked off. So it wasn't Itch.io's storefront definitely wasn't any kind of Wild West. It was just a little more flexible than Steam, and because they didn't directly control the content that went on there, they left it up to the users to do that. They didn't really have a way to know which of those games with those kind of tags were safe according to Visa and MasterCard restrictions, and which were not. So they just dumped a lot and are now slowly trying to work their way through getting these games back into the storefront, the ones that are not against the Visa and MasterCard restrictions. I think that's just moving on to the next phase of battle, where even those games are going to be an issue. But that's where we come in to try and help them fight back against that sort of thing. So yeah, anyway, the important point I'm trying to make is don't attack Itch.io on this. They are very much the victims in as much as the developers are, they are also a giant victim on this. They didn't want to do this, they were forced to. So we're going to talk about why this is a bad thing and why we need to fight back against it in the next section. But before we do that, let's have a look at this picture and see if we can figure out what is going on. Shintersoft ice cream. It seems very English. Okay, I don't think it's Chinese. I think it's something like Polynesian, Malaysian, somewhere down in the Southeast Asia oceanic area. Can we say when this is, and why is my cat fussing? Talo, is that a place? Oh, it's Indonesia. Okay, I was being absolutely blind. There's a bloody great flag up there. I'm an idiot sometimes. Okay, so this is Indonesia, but when? When does this look like? Bless you, cat. Not a very fine suits, a lot of traditional clothes, but not too hectic a suit. I'm going to say this is again like the 60s, so let's say 65. And let's see if we can actually gracefully find Indonesia. Where is it? Is this Indonesia? It's Malaysia. I don't know what that means. No, there's Indonesia. So should we just... I'm just gonna say Palu because I like the sound of it. I wouldn't know where else it might be. Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. So 1965, Palu, Indonesia. Makes. Okay, 6 years off, not too bad. A hell of a far way off. Right. So is that also Indonesia? I don't really know how it works around here. Because that's Malaysia there. So that's Jakarta. Queen Juliana of the Netherlands. Okay, so not really the score I would have liked to have had. We didn't do quite as well as I would have thought. That is a very long way. 1,500 Ks, considering how small it looks on the map. But yeah, way to go, Indonesia. That looks like a lovely event. Pity about your authoritarian leader at the time. But yeah, great. We're doing badly. Let's get back to our subject matter. Let's just look at the next picture first. Oh, another black and white picture. Come on, guys. Where's something a little more modern? I'm tired of the black and white stuff. The bio. Is this French? No. Okay, we will struggle with that in a minute. But let us talk about why the stuff that's happening to Ichio is a bad thing. And I personally identified 4 main reasons why it's bad. So I'll list through them, and I'm fascinated to know if you jump into the comments, if you could tell me what your thoughts on it, if you think some of these things are good, perhaps. Yeah, just to see what kind of opinions are out there. But the reasons I think they're bad. So firstly, I don't like the idea of payment processors, private companies, doing moral management in other companies in society. I don't think they have the skill set and the the skill set, and B, the kind of the ability to take face the consequences of their decisions. This is something that, if it has to be done, then governments should be doing it, because governments have to face the voters the next time that a voting platform comes through. Whereas these guys they don't have that. They are far too big for any kind of financial pressure to fall on them if they do something wrong. So yeah, they should not be making any kind of moral judgment. It's a little bit like, to set an analogy, it's a little bit like if Ford and VW and Toyota came and told you that you couldn't have a car. You're 25 years old or something like that, and they said, nope, you can't have a car because people under 30 have more accidents, so you don't get a car, and they're going to take your car away. Or they're going to put pressures on your local car dealerships to not sell you a car. And we'd be quite mad about that. If you have a driver's license, the government says you can have a car, so why does this private company decide to say that you can't have a car? And what if it gets worse? What if they just say you can't have a license? What if they just suddenly decide that women shouldn't be driving cars? So if there's a possibility that your car could be driven by a woman, it gets taken away from you, no matter who you are. This is sort of an example of what's happening in this context. You have a private company making decisions for people who shouldn't be making these kinds of decisions, with no consequences as to the results of their decisions, and no awareness of the results of their decisions. They don't have the competency or the right moral investiture to make these kinds of decisions. So that's the first problem I have with it. The second problem is with Collective Shout itself. Now, it presents itself as an entity that is all about feminism. It's about supporting women, which is great. Women need support. We need entities to support women. We need feminist organizations. But when you dig a little bit more into it, we find out that Collective Shout is in fact associated with other extreme religious organizations, organizations who support things like traditional wives, which is where the wife doesn't work, and kind of as a sociocultural norm rather than a personal choice. Wives don't work; they stay at home. They raise the kids. They cook the food. Make sure a nice warm husband is there for husband to come. A nice warm meal is there for husband to come home to. And this is very much the opposite of feminism. So that immediately casts doubt on their perspective, on their claims, and they seem to be more of a religiously inspired prudery organization rather than actual feminism organization, and sort of allowing them to have this kind of influence on other major initiatives, in other major industries, is a major backward step in morality. They are not people who you want making decisions, because they are not who they claim to be, and they do not have positive, forward-thinking goals in mind. They are not a good entity, and we don't want them to be making these kind of decisions. The third reason that I don't like any of this happening is possibly a little bit conspiracy theory-ish, but I think quite reasonably so, because it ties in with the things like YouTube demanding sort of photo ID in certain countries, and possibly eventually in all countries, to have access to a lot of the thing. And people are righteously upset about this, because it looks like governments trying to track you, because YouTube and corporations as well, because if your viewing habits and your entertainment habits are now tied to your identity, then it's very easy for governments to know what you're into and make decisions about you personally with that information in mind. And possibly if you're looking at sort of more adult oriented stuff, that is still fine, that is still legal, that is not a bad thing, but still has a social sort of negative aspect on it, then they can use that to pressure you into bowing to the authoritarian will. We definitely don't want that kind of stuff, and this is a step towards that kind of thing. So we remove all the adult games from itch.io, and then let itch.io bring some of them back again, and then say, but if you want your players to have access to those games, they need to prove that they are old enough by providing photo ID. And then there's yet another organization that has to provide this info to the government, or can sell this info to other corporations for sort of advertising spam and all that kind of stuff. And it gets even further than that, because now that you're identifying yourself by signing in with your photo ID and then supporting like an LGBTQ plus game, that now identifies you as part of a minority. And there is an awful lot of politics out at the moment, populist politics, where people are being elected not because they are competent leaders, but because they are promising to deal with a minority that other people don't particularly like. That is a terrible, terrible, evil thing, and the last time it really took off was the beginning of World War II. So, that is definitely not something that we want, but that is something that is happening, and this is a big step in that direction. So this is why this is not just a bad thing happening, but actually a very, very scary, potentially evil thing happening. And then the fourth reason is less dramatic than those reasons, but it is that this is not really a factual thing. I mean, the claims here by Collective Shout, even if we take them at their face, even if we say these are, this is for women, this is a feminist step to try and get rid of this stuff because it's bad for women. It's not really. It very much. There is a big problem, especially amongst the more fanatical organizations, that they aren't good at seeing shades of grey. Everything is black and white, and they don't quite understand the idea that situations are complex. So you have their perspective just being that all porn is bad because it's bad for women. Whereas the actuality is that there is a lot of different kind of adult content, a huge range of it, and even more so in gaming, because if you have like an erotic video that is just passive, that is somebody consuming it without really in any way kind of experiencing the scenario. But in a game, you are now having to make decisions. You are now having to approach it from different angles. You are getting to see the consequences and experience the consequences of your decisions. So, sort of erotic games can be very educational in a very positive way, in a sex positive way. And it's because of the variance, especially in indie gaming. You have stuff that is made specifically for women, by women, stuff that is specifically made for other minorities, by those minorities. It's not the same as the mainstream porn industry, because even though that stuff exists there, it's often made by people who are not parts of those groups. So a lot of it can be bad for it, but a lot of it can also be quite good. And in the gaming arena, even more of it is going to be good. So this kind of blanket statement that porn is bad for women and promotes violence against women is absolute rubbish. It's absolute nonsense. It's very non-factual, just through rational thinking, let alone actual scientific evidence. So that's why I think it's a bad thing. And on top of that, just talking about bad things is not the same as supporting them. If somebody writes a book about World War II, that doesn't mean they're supporting, the authoritarian influences in World War II. Sometimes expressing a negative thing through art, through whether it be gaming or movies or pictures or whatever, is actually a good thing, because it allows people to have an empathic reaction to it, rather than just you can just say, oh, these people were bad. But if you give them an experience that shows that the people are bad, that's a fantastic thing. It doesn't mean you're supporting the bad people. It means you're making them look bad in a way that people who weren't part of the original experience could then see what bad things were happening around them. So I have a problem with people trying to censorship stuff without understanding how people actually react and respond to that kind of censorship. And there's huge amounts of sociological and scientific evidence showing that if you hide people away from sexual truths, if you don't explain stuff to people, like abstinence societies and things like that, it makes things worse. It makes teen pregnancies much more likely to happen. It makes STDs much more likely to happen, because people don't understand what is going on. They don't understand what the consequences of their actions are if they breach the regulations, which they will do, because they have a billion years of biology telling them that that's what they need to do. And they don't understand what the safe ways of doing it are, where the risks lie, where the challenges lie, and they have no ability to deal with the emotional pressures that might be pushing them into violating these hard, unreasonable regulations that are trying to constrain them. So yeah, you want education about sex positivity. You don't want education telling you that sex is bad when people's bodies are telling them no, it isn't, and rather more accurately. So you definitely don't want to hide sex away. You want to give people experiences, healthy sex positive experiences. So that's where I do agree with it, is that bad porn is bad, but the good stuff, the good erotic adult content is good. It can really help people live a more stable life, and that is it's sexual life, as it were, and that's really, really important. And kind of the final detail along these lines is that really this is something that parents should be deciding for their kids, and adults should be deciding for themselves, because it's not something that corporations or private groups can decide for people. They don't understand the context, they don't understand the intelligence, the social dynamics. They have no idea what is going on in each individual's life, so they can't make sweeping decisions like this. Having said that, I accept that many parents are not good parents. They're average at best, or terrible at worst, which is where governments then need to step in and override parental decisions, and that's a really hard one to balance, because that comes in with sort of privacy and government overreach and all those kind of things, and that's a whole argument all on its own. And the truth is that it goes in both directions. You have a lot of situations where government should not be overriding parents, and you have a lot of situations in which they definitely should, because those parents are horrific people. So yeah, again, these are complex questions that have complex answers, and extremist, possibly religiously extremist organizations in Australia and big faceless sociopathic payment processors should not be the people making these decisions. So it's very much a bad thing. So yeah, after that diatribe about the responsibilities of moral behaviors and such like, let's let all of that sink in a bit, and let's play another round of Time Guesser and try and figure out where this is. Check that I'm still recording okay and everything's working fine. Yeah, it looks fine. I hope so. So we have Maurice Chevalier, and I'm going to say that's 50s again. Oh, could that even be 30s? I don't know. I was going to say this is 50s. So I'm going to say 1950. But now this language, what is this? Is this East European? The Prince of something. What do these people look like? I mean, this has given me very East European vibes. Look at the spiky fence and a wooden ladder that looks like that humorous ladder in what is it called? The Vatican, that nobody can move, and somebody moved it once, and there was nearly warfare from all of the religious entities that own different parts of the Vatican or share ownership over it. Anyway, just the distraction there. Where do these people look like? Could it be Polish? I don't know. I don't think it is Russian. Oh, it's definitely not Russian. It's not Cyrillic. I don't think it is like Swedish. Could be like Finnish or something like that. It's not Dutch. I don't think it's East European or possibly Central European. You know what? I'm going to say this is Polish. I'm going to click on Warsaw, 1950. Probably going to be horribly wrong. But let's see. We're doing badly as it is. I don't think we can even make it to a winning state unless we do very well here. But I have no idea where this is. So let's see. 20 years off. This was 1930. Alright, well, and we are in fact in Finland, so that was Finnish. Okay, I don't really know much about Finnish. But, yeah, 4-5, I think that scuppers us for a winning game. unless we do fantastically well in the final round. Let's have a look at our next picture. Yeah, we would need to get 9,000 points for this, and I don't know if we're likely to. This looks like I was going to say this looks 60s, but I think that guy's just dressed 60s. I think this is later, even though it's black and white. Alright, well, let's talk about our final subject matter, which is really the question of how do we fight this? How do we fight this thing that is happening? Well, the first thing is Collective Shout claim to have gotten it through sort of mass harassment of the entities. So we can take them to a certain degree at their word for that, and do exactly the same. There are many people signing petitions. There are many people phoning MasterCard and Visa and all of that, the helplines, to try and express their dissatisfaction. There are entities that have arranged this kind of thing, written scripts, looked for phone numbers and all of that kind of stuff. So a little bit of an online search. You can join that part of the fight. The second way I would say you should do it is to talk to your local political entities. Call your congressman or your sort of county representative or whoever you can, and just say, look, this is bad stuff that is happening. I don't like this. How do we deal with it? How do we send pressure back up the line? And if enough people talk to them about it, they realize that that's where the votes come from, and so they are more likely to push back on Itch.io's behalf and on Steam's behalf and on other entities' behalf to say, no, these are not the people that should be making moral decisions. This might be a little bit tricky because I think there is government enthusiasm behind these efforts, because it is a way to track people and to track inclinations and minority memberships and all of that kind of stuff. But we know that political entities fight over and above everything else for the vote so they can stay in power. So I'm sure it will have some influences there, especially on the smaller grassroots political entities who can put pressure upstream, because they tend to be a lot more about the people and a lot less about government surveillance and overreach. So yeah, there is that. And the third way is just to make sure that you vote. A lot of political entities have various tricks to make it hard for you to vote if you are not part of the current regime, and you need to just fight past that hardship. You need to just go and make your voice heard. And for those who go, oh, my vote doesn't count, yes it does, because if you go and vote, then the other people around you who think like you might go and vote, and suddenly your vote turns into 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, and it is amazing how that happens, and I have seen it happen. So yeah, go and vote. Get there whatever it takes. Make sure that you're registered. Make sure that you are able to get to the place. Make sure that you can find the voting stations. People in much more difficult situations have managed to vote in the past. So it's a little bit embarrassing if you say, oh no, it's difficult, I can't vote. Make sure that you vote, because it is important to do that. And even if the bad people in charge don't win, if they come close to losing, it gives them a big fright and they back down a little bit. So yeah, do your political duty, and that's really what it boils down to. And that's all I have to say about that. So this is why there is excitement and things happening in Itch.io, and this is what we need to do about it. So let us finish this game off, see if we can possibly recover from the horrors of this terrible score. What have we got here? We've got Coca-Cola, we've got English, we've got Video Hire and Philips. We don't have any obvious American flags. We have Carlsberg. Something about the world. Okay, so this is a Pride March, I'm guessing. Quite suitable for the event for the sake of our Pride stuff there. For the sake of our discussions. I'm gonna say, oh, does this look like 60s? I mean, not really. Those are some pretty tight haircuts. Nothing that looks too 60s, nothing that looks too 70s. There's some cool shades. Is this 80s? Is this a Pride March in the 80s? I'm going to say 85. That's the vibe I'm getting here. I might be horribly wrong. There might be people just with futuristic haircuts. But, yeah. Where could this be? Westminster. Could that be Westminster? It looks like it's Westminster, which is England. The London area, Greater London area, I believe. And the lack of American flags supports that. Alright, so we're going to say Westminster. I'm going to say 85. Where the hell is Westminster? It's around here somewhere, isn't it? Westminster, where are you? To the west, I would assume. I don't know. There's West Ham. There's Woking. I don't know if they're particularly woke. No. The hell's Westminster? Wandsworth. English people, help me. Tell me where Westminster is. Apologies if I'm sounding a little raspy and getting a bit quieter. I am actually getting sick. Is Westminster not in London? Is it a separate place all on its own? I mean, it could be. It's Norwich, Worcester, it's Wales. Alright, I don't know. I'm not going to spend the whole night poking around here. So I'm just going to say west of London, but somewhere in the Greater London area. And 1985, and let's see how well we do. Are we going to just miss a victory? Are we going to horribly miss a victory? Or are we going to just scrape through? And we are going to, horribly just scrape through. We were only 12 k's away. It was Piccadilly Circus. Okay, City of Westminster. There we go. It was much closer to London, centre of London, than I thought it was. I thought it was further out than that. So, cool. And I think that means we actually got a winning game, what I consider a winning game, which is above 30,000. And it was 1985, exactly. Well, my reasoning was good, thanks to this dude in his sunglasses. He convinced me it was the 80s. So, well done, guys. And let's see what our final score says. 32,000. That is a winning score. It's above the 30 mark. It's unfortunately not a gold score, which is above the 40 mark, but the 30 mark will do. And I think we covered some important sociological questions tonight. And I think if nothing else can be said from this, is to just go and vote. Even if you agree with this effort, just go and vote anyway, because the more people that vote, the more accurately we can look at what society is doing and how it's become, and we can act accordingly. And I think that's quite important. If we can just get society well mapped out, we'll know where we are, and we'll be able to see what we need to do. But yeah, really, censorship is almost never a good thing, especially when it's religiously motivated. And this does seem to be the fact that is motivating this, and I don't think that's a good thing ever. So yeah, go and vote, go and give Itch.io some support, go and give some dirty looks to your Visa or MasterCard, whichever you have, and yeah, see if there's any alternative methods of payment that you can find on the internet, because we need to undercut these behemoths a little bit, at least until they buy whatever the alternative is and subsume it. But at least we can possibly have a bit of freedom in that time. So yes, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one, and goodbye.